pretty much got worse and worse back in the day. I at least tried making the most of it by skull tricking some of the green dragon bots, just to get some free whips. But the amount of bots that were just there, which is outrageous. I felt my reports weren't doing anything, even as a player mod. I would see the same bots for weeks, and even bots that made it all the way to 99 melee stats, without getting any sort of punishment. So on to the second thing, censorship. Back in the day, I was enjoying censoring things. Obviously, the chat in RuneScape for censorship of, swearing, whatever. Back in the day, I was enjoying censoring things. Obviously, the chat in RuneScape for censorship of, swearing, whatever. Obviously, the chat in RuneScape for censorship of, swearing, whatever. On their YouTube page. If we were to go back to any of the videos back in 2012 and earlier, most of the videos were on approval. This meant that Jagex will only show comments they liked and hide and delete comments they weren't agreeing with. This was bad because back then, Jagex never actually got feedback from their player base on any given update. This ties a little bit back to the botting thing I just mentioned. Back in 2011, the botting thing was so bad that the trust between Jagex and the players were at an all-time low. To make matters worse, whenever the Golden Joystick Awards was announced, a lot of players, including myself, were highly opposed of Jagex winning that award. What really took the cake that made people not vote was a huge censorship with a player known as Giblix. There was a huge uproar with him losing his player mod for just showing the problem of the bots inside the game. I even remember clearly leaving a comment saying, "I am voting for League of Legends even though I don't play that game." In a twist of irony, I basically quit RuneScape at this point, but a few weeks later, after losing the Golden Joystick, Jagex finally announced the first bot nuke, or cluster fluster. Communication was key to tell your player base that there was a bot solution coming in the works, which leads to my final thing, communication to the fan base. I always felt that Jagex was never in tune with their player base, and never cared what we thought for the longest time, and would silence anyone that spoke out. I can only speak for myself for back in the day that I felt that Jagex's actions led to people being more toxic in-game. Since Jagex always gave a middle finger towards their players would do the exact same thing towards Jagex and other players. With the frustration of Jagex, some people spilled their frustration into the game, myself included. I even took it a step further and spilled my frustration to some JMods, either on the YouTube private message page or the player mod inquiry. I think Jagex finally came to terms after the release of EOC. Only after that point, I think they realized the scope of the mistake they made in splitting the community, and at that point they tried to minimize the damage by starting to be more active in the community, but I think it was already too late at that point. So anyway, some of you are actually wondering, like, what is this? This is not even an apology. But I just had to give some backstory before continuing, because I have been watching Jagex and observing them for the past few years and noticed a huge improvement on everything that I've listed. I told myself that I wouldn't return until the 3 things that I mentioned became better. The botting issue is more contained than ever before. The censorship is near to none now, as their YouTube page no longer approves comments. Jagex has even branched off to other social media such as Facebook, Twitter, with every single JMod having one, and of course Reddit. Reddit being the biggest changer. It allows the JMods to see what the community is doing, wants, needs, etc. JMods can comment on a post that someone makes either for a dangerous glitch that needs fixing, or to just post a comment just to make someone's day feel better. The lack of censorship from the forums, and with everyone posting on Reddit, allows Jagex to finally evolve and grow, learning from the mistakes of the past and understanding their player base. In return, these past few years have been amazing from the communication Jagex has been doing to their player base. I have seen next to none toxicity in the community, with most people being cheerful and happy. Something I really wanted back in the day of 2011. It felt very cozy, a RuneScape community done right. Jagex finally opened themselves up to criticism and take feedback into the game, and the community is now better. The live streams, which is something I'll touch on once I talk about RuneShark, have made the connection between Jagex and player even more stronger. Lastly, the JMods have taken a plunge and decided to be more upfront in the community. I could barely name 5 JMods back in 2011, but now I could easily name 10 of them. There was one thing that really caught me off guard though, and that was the kindness that a few JMods showed me over the past few years. Something that felt very strange to me after the garbage I said in the past to Jagex. One of these JMods being Mod Slayer, also known as Juliet, whenever she worked at Jagex. Back in 2014, she personally contacted me if I was interested in going to Jagex to check out the Legacy Mode beta. Keep in mind, this is also when I was doing Minecraft videos and I hadn't touched RuneScape videos in over 3 years. One of the main reasons why I didn't accept was because I felt like I burned bridges with Jagex ages ago and that they would never forgive me. For the first time in years, Jagex shown some type of kindness towards me, and I really didn't know how to process it. I was very appreciative of the offer that I would have been considered after all these years of not actually playing RuneScape. But then Mod Slayer took it a step further after I declined the invitation, and that was to help me understand some of the major changes that happened in the game, and then later helping me once Legacy Mode came out. She even took my feedback of something that I wanted to give the devs whenever Legacy was being introduced, and that was a way to reset your combo level back to how it was before pre-EOC. She passed the feedback along, and it actually became that guy in Lumbridge now that could reset your stats. I felt very shitty though. I felt that no JMO would ever accept me ever again after all these years. And yet through Mod Slayer's actions, I was able to see how horrible I was towards Jagex back in 2011. Members of Jagex still offered advice to someone like me that was rude back in 2011. I am then reminded that Jagex is comprised of people, and people do have feelings too. People that must have felt very bad when the community constantly is at their throats because they spent hours working on something they like. I know that the community sometimes complains when there's a bad update, bandwagon hates towards Jagex for no reason, or the whole QA meme. But remembering that there are people trying their hardest at Jagex, and that Jagex isn't one person but many.